Hey guys, welcome back to another week of DevDrop. This week we'll be covering the 3rd of June to the 11th of June. In this week's episode, we're going to be looking at Rust, Dart, Flutter, and a bit of .NET. They've all had updates, and I'm just going to share those with you, as once again, it wasn't a pretty busy week in the developer world. We're all for stability, so, any unneeded news is always not welcome, I guess, is the best way of describing it. But yeah, like as usual, this is just going to be a quick episode breaking down the news. If you enjoy what you see and you like the rest of my content, please do like and subscribe down below. I really do appreciate it. So let's get straight into it. So first up, we have Dart. So Dart is the language behind Flutter. And if you didn't already know, Dart has an extensive set of compilers. So this allows it to compile on mobile, web, and even desktops. These flexible compilers are what you see in Flutter. That's why it's able to work on mobile, Android, iOS, and web, and desktop in the future, as was covered in last week's DevDrop. But this week they announced a thing called Dart2Native. So what is Dart2Native? Well, Dart2Native is an extension of the existing compiler set that allows for Dart programs to be executed in command line on macOS, Windows, and Linux in self-contained executables. From the command line, essentially. There's really nothing else more to it, It's allowing you to do that function, and it's honestly it's really complicated in the explanation of what it actually does and what the benefits it brings. So I'm just going to leave an article down below from Dart explaining the features and going into much more depth than I'm comfortable to go while talking on the fly. So that's all there is really for Dart. Dart2Native allowing for the compiler to create self-contained executables on Mac, Windows, and Linux. Next up, we have more news. Next thing that we have is also from Dart. They announced this week of a new feature in the technical preview branch called Null Safety. So what is Null Safety? Well, we all have heard of the class of errors known as null errors, null pointers, etc., etc. That class of errors is normally hard to find and debug. So what does Null Safety do? Well, when you check a variable and you assume that it is of a type, because Dart is a type-safe language, you want to know that it is guaranteed of that type. Well, this wasn't previously possible with null. You can't assume that something is null, essentially. With null errors then occurring, because you can't assume that this is null. What Null Safety does is make sure that you know that if something is null, it is null. And that's about it. It's a little tool to help developers reduce their bugs, become more stable, have a safer application at the end of the day, where every type is known for the language, because Dart is a type-safe language, so it needs to know what every type is doing in the language. And that's about it from Dart this week. They had a lot of stuff, new features, so once again, link is in the description for the Null Safety article from Dart themselves. Next up, we have Rust. Rust 1.44.0 was announced, and they had a really short dev blog post about it, which is, once again, link in the description below. But what is 1.44 bringing to the table, I guess? Well, it's a small release. It allows for cargo tree integrated into the cargo itself, support for async, await in no_std context, as it highlights, and there's a bunch of other stuff, but it's a really minor release. But I'm just letting you guys know out there that Rust 1.44 is announced and coming, so good for Rust developers. Next up, we also have Microsoft, who has brought an update to the .NET platform, .NET Preview 5. So what does .NET Preview 5 really bring? It has one breaking change on it, which might be of concern to some developers. That change is the removal of built-in Windows RT support in .NET 5.0. So this Windows RT runtime technology is no longer going to be built in and supported in .NET. So if you have any applications that are running on WinRT, you might want to have a look at them and potentially not be able to upgrade to .NET 5.0 because it brings a bunch of different issues. What else does it have? Well, they have expanded the system.directory services.protocols to Linux and Mac OS. So they're adding cross-platform support for system directory services and protocols in this .NET 5.0 release, essentially, which is really good because it means that this is going to now become a much better supported language essentially. And at the end of the day, they've also added support for Alpine 3.12, and that's about it. Those three things are the major changes, I guess, to .NET 5.0. Announced. Once again, links in the bio for that, or in the description actually. So that's all there is really for this week's news. It really wasn't in depth as I expected. I got dragged away with work, still in my Amplify shirt, for example. So I'm really sorry for that, but I do promise you next week we'll be back at it with the usual contentful dev drops. So if you like what you saw today, or you're interested in more developer news, I can only get better as time goes by, right? So leave a like and comment below. Remember to subscribe as well. I really do appreciate every subscription. 10 away from 250 now, so that's always brilliant. And that's all for this week, everyone. So stay safe and keep coding.